The Browns thought their quarterback situation was settled. Big contract, big name, big expectations, but inside that locker room something quietly shifted. Veteran leaders started talking, young stars started backing someone else. And now the real question is who's getting paid, it's who the team actually believes in. The first real signal didn't come from a headline, it didn't come from a leaked report, it came from a rookie who had no reason to play politics. Quinshon Judkins isn't some fringe roster player fighting for reps, he's projected to be a foundational piece of this offense. High draft capital, immediate expectations, a player the Browns are counting on to help reshape their identity. So when he speaks, it carries weight, especially this early. And when Judkins was asked about Shedeur Sanders, he didn't hesitate. There was no corporate tone, no "we'll see how camp goes." No safe, middle-of-the-road cliché about competition. Instead, he talked about how fun it is playing with Sanders. He called him an incredible talent. He emphasized his locker room presence, and most importantly, he made it clear the players have faith in him. That's not small talk, that's endorsement. Rookies are usually careful, they're trained to avoid controversy. The standard script is simple: respect the veterans, praise everyone, avoid picking sides. But Judkins didn't follow that script. He didn't mention contract hierarchies. He didn't balance his answer with a nod to the incumbent starter. He spoke from experience, from what he's already seen inside the building. And that's where this gets interesting. Because outside the facility, the narrative has been very different. Some analysts continue to question whether Sanders is truly ready. Others speculate the Browns could still explore alternative options if things don't stabilize. Rumors swirl every offseason. That's the nature of the league. But inside that locker room, the tone feels different. When a young offensive centerpiece openly backs his quarterback, it sends a message. It tells veterans that chemistry is forming. It tells coaches that belief is building organically. And it tells the front office that momentum doesn't always follow the salary cap chart. Some fans believe this is just off-season optimism. Others think it's the beginning of a quiet shift in power. Either way, Judkins didn't sound uncertain, he sounded convinced. And conviction spreads fast in NFL locker rooms. Because when belief starts coming from the players, not the media, not the marketing team, that's when things start to change. But Judkins' confidence wasn't built in a podcast clip alone. And what happened next gave his words even more meaning. It wasn't a touchdown, it wasn't a highlight throw, it wasn't even a full-speed rep. It was socks. During rookie minicamp, cameras caught a small exchange between Shedeur Sanders and Quinshon Judkins. At first glance, it looked harmless. Sanders noticed something minor: Judkins' socks weren't up to standard. Instead of ignoring it, instead of laughing it off, he calmly pointed it out. No yelling, no ego, no show. Just attention to detail. And that moment quietly traveled across social media. Fans called it a W leader moment, some brushed it off as nothing, but inside football culture those details matter. Leadership in the NFL rarely starts with big speeches. It starts with standards. It starts with accountability in the smallest things: how you dress, how you line up, how you carry yourself. Sanders didn't grandstand. He didn't try to embarrass a teammate. He corrected him like someone who already sees himself responsible for the standard of the room. That's different. Quarterbacks are expected to lead, but not every quarterback commands respect naturally. Especially rookies. Especially those drafted outside the first round. There's usually a quiet hierarchy: veterans speak, rookies listen. But this moment flipped that expectation. Judkins didn't react defensively, he adjusted. No tension, no awkwardness, just mutual understanding. That body language told a bigger story than any press conference could. Chemistry isn't built in interviews, it's built in repetition and accountability. And early on, Sanders was already stepping into that role. Some fans believe moments like that are staged. Others argue leadership can't be faked over time. Either way, what stood out wasn't the correction, it was how natural it looked. Because if a rookie quarterback is already comfortable holding teammates accountable in May, what does that look like in November? That's when perception started to shift. This wasn't just about arm talent anymore. It wasn't just about draft position. It wasn't about hype from college or comparisons to veterans. It became about presence. And presence is something you either have or you don't. Mini camp is usually quiet, controlled, predictable. But that brief exchange suggested something subtle. Sanders wasn't just trying to make the team, he was trying to shape it. And the locker room noticed. But correcting socks in May is one thing. Handling pressure in December is something else entirely. The real test didn't happen in mini camp, it didn't happen in controlled reps or quiet practices. It happened in December under bright lights against a defense that punishes mistakes. Week 16, cold air, tight game, the Browns were fighting for positioning and every possession mattered. Late in the game, Shedeur Sanders checked into a screen pass designed to catch the defense off guard. On paper, it was the right read. Buffalo had been aggressive all night. But that's when everything unraveled. Linebacker Matt Milano diagnosed the play instantly. He didn't hesitate. He attacked downhill. Quinshon Judkins caught the ball and got hit hard. The play collapsed before it could even develop. When Judkins stayed down, the stadium went quiet. The diagnosis later confirmed the damage, a dislocated ankle and a fractured fibula. Season over. And here where the story changed. After the game, Sanders didn't hide behind play calling. He didn't shift blame to protection. He didn't say, "That's football." Instead, he took ownership. He admitted the decision stung. He said he replayed it in his head. He made it clear he felt responsible for putting his teammate in harm's way. That response caught people off guard. Quarterbacks are trained to project confidence, to deflect doubt, to stay emotionally neutral in public, but Sanders showed something different: accountability mixed with visible guilt. Some fans argued the play was inevitable. Others pointed out that Milano simply made an elite read, and reports suggest the coaching staff didn't place blame on Sanders at all. Football is violent. Injuries happen. Still, what mattered wasn't the technical breakdown. It was the reaction. Judkins later made it clear there was no resentment, no finger-pointing. Teammates reportedly rallied around both players. Instead of creating tension, the moment built trust. Because leadership isn't proven when everything goes right, it's revealed when something goes wrong. And Sanders didn't run from it. He owned it. That's the kind of response veterans notice, the kind of response that builds credibility faster than statistics ever could. By the time the week ended, the narrative had subtly shifted again. This wasn't just a talented rookie anymore. This was a quarterback willing to carry emotional weight for his teammates. And inside an NFL locker room, that carries more value than any highlight reel. But if that moment built trust internally, what happened next expanded the conversation beyond the offense entirely. Up to this point, the support for Shedeur Sanders had mostly come from the offensive side of the ball. A rookie running back, subtle chemistry moments, emotional accountability after a tough loss. That's meaningful, but it stays contained within one unit. Then Myles Garrett spoke. And that changed everything. Garrett isn't just another veteran, he's the face of the franchise, a defensive player of the year, the anchor of the Browns' identity. When he talks about the direction of the team, people listen, not just fans, but ownership and the front office too. During an appearance on a podcast with Micah Parsons, the quarterback conversation came up. Garrett didn't dodge it. He didn't give a generic answer about trusting the coaches. Instead, he made it clear that the team was focused on building around the quarterback currently taking reps and developing within the system. He didn't declare anyone the permanent starter, he didn't create controversy, but he signaled alignment. And that's powerful. Defensive captains rarely involve themselves in quarterback debates publicly. It's not their lane. When they do, it usually means something has already solidified internally. Some fans believe Garrett's comments were simply supportive veteran leadership. Others think it was a subtle endorsement of where the locker room is leaning. Reports haven't confirmed any official decision, but perception matters in the NFL almost as much as reality. Garrett understands the timeline. He's in his prime. Elite pass rushers don't get unlimited championship windows. Every season counts. So when he speaks positively about the team's young quarterback direction, it suggests he sees something sustainable, not just temporary hype. That's where the power dynamic shifts. Because now this isn't just a rookie trying to win over teammates, it's the franchise cornerstone acknowledging the momentum. And momentum spreads quickly. When defensive leaders publicly align with an offensive vision, it creates unity across the locker room. It signals that the team isn't fractured. It tells everyone, from practice squad players to coordinators, that there's a shared belief forming. But here what makes it even more interesting. Garrett didn't mention contracts, he didn't reference financial commitments, he focused on football, on growth, on direction. That subtle separation matters. Some fans believe money dictates opportunity. Others argue performance and chemistry eventually outweigh numbers on paper. Garrett's tone leaned toward the latter without ever saying it directly. And in a league where politics often shape narratives, that kind of quiet clarity stands out. The quarterback conversation suddenly wasn't just about potential anymore. It became about alignment at the highest levels of the roster. But if a defensive superstar backing the direction raised eyebrows, what the coaching staff had already done behind the scenes might raise even more. Before the Browns ever became part of the equation, there was already history. Todd Monken didn't just discover Shedeur Sanders this offseason. Their connection traces back further to a moment that quietly says more than any press conference ever could. Reports claim that during his time coordinating in Baltimore, Monken had real interest in drafting Sanders in the later rounds. The idea wasn't to throw him into the spotlight immediately. The plan, according to speculation, was developmental, learning behind an established MVP, absorbing the system, refining timing and footwork. But Sanders declined that path. At the time, sitting long-term behind a franchise quarterback didn't align with his vision. Some fans believe that decision showed confidence. Others think it showed impatience. Either way, it established something important. Monken saw value early. Fast forward to Cleveland. When Monken arrived and the Browns' quarterback situation became fluid, that prior evaluation suddenly mattered. Coaches don't forget players they once tried to bring into their system. If anything, familiarity creates trust. Monken already understood Sanders' processing ability, his accuracy in rhythm, his comfort operating from spread concepts. This wasn't a random pairing. During early off-season sessions, their body language told its own story. Cameras caught a brief embrace. Conversations lingered longer than usual. Public comments from Monken were measured but pointed, praising preparation, decision-making, and command in meetings. He didn't promise anything, he didn't declare a depth chart, but he consistently emphasized development and readiness. That consistency raised eyebrows. Some analysts argue coaches always speak positively about young quarterbacks. It's standard off-season optimism. But others point out that Monken's history with quarterback development, including working with elite talent in Baltimore, gives his words added weight. He knows what NFL-caliber traits look like. And perhaps more importantly, he knows what they don't look like. There's another layer here too. Coaches operate on timelines just like players do. They don't attach their reputations to projects they don't believe in. If Monken is quietly investing extra meeting time, extra reps, extra schematic tweaks, that suggests long-term thinking. Reports haven't confirmed any preferential treatment, and publicly the Browns maintain that competition remains open, but subtle details matter: practice rep distribution, installation focus, playbook adjustments tailored to strengths. Some fans believe those details hint at direction. Others insist it's simply preparation for all scenarios. But when a coach once tried to draft a quarterback and later reunites with him under different circumstances, that's rarely coincidence. It's continuity. And continuity creates comfort. For a rookie quarterback navigating a high-pressure environment, having a coordinator who already understands your tendencies can accelerate trust faster than raw talent alone. Which leads to the uncomfortable question. If the locker room is building belief, if the defensive leader is aligned, and if the coordinator has prior conviction, what happens to the veteran standing in the middle of all of it? Now we get to the part nobody inside the building can ignore. Deshaun Watson isn't just another veteran on the roster. He represents one of the largest financial commitments in franchise history. A fully guaranteed deal, massive cap implications, a contract structure that, on paper, demands opportunity. That's the reality. When Cleveland made that move, the expectation was clear: franchise stability at quarterback for years, elite production, playoff runs, a long-term answer. But the NFL doesn't operate on paper. Since arriving, Watson's time on the field has been limited. Injuries disrupted continuity, a shoulder issue, then the devastating Achilles injury, and then another setback that required further medical attention. Nearly 2 seasons have passed without consistent rhythm. That matters in this league. Quarterback timing is fragile. Chemistry with receivers doesn't pause and wait. Offensive systems evolve, teammates move on, and every missed snap creates distance between expectation and reality. Some fans believe the contract guarantees him every chance to reclaim the job once healthy. Financial logic would suggest as much. Others argue that production, not price tag, ultimately dictates the depth chart. That's where tension quietly builds. When a team invests that heavily, pride becomes part of the equation. Front offices don't like admitting miscalculations. Ownership doesn't enjoy writing massive checks for bench roles, and players are fully aware of those dynamics. But locker rooms operate differently. Inside that space, availability often outweighs salary. Teammates gravitate toward consistency. They rally behind whoever is in the huddle every week, taking hits, making throws, accepting blame. Watson's situation isn't simple. Recovering from back-to-back major injuries, especially an Achilles, is a brutal process. Mobility can change, confidence can waver. Even if medically cleared, regaining pre-injury explosiveness isn't automatic. Reports suggest his rehab has been steady. Coaches publicly express optimism. No one inside the organization has declared him finished. But the timeline is unclear, and that uncertainty fuels speculation. Some analysts believe Cleveland could manage the situation strategically, easing Watson back in while continuing to develop Sanders. Others think the financial structure forces a decision sooner rather than later. A split locker room is the last thing any franchise wants. Yet here's the uncomfortable truth. If Sanders continues building chemistry, if young offensive pieces publicly back him, if defensive leaders align behind the direction, the contract becomes heavier. Not financially, emotionally. Because once momentum shifts inside a team, revering it is difficult. Players don't respond to balance sheets, they respond to belief. Watson still has experience. He's won games in this league. He's seen playoff intensity. Those traits carry value, but experience alone doesn't erase lost time. And Cleveland now faces a crossroads few teams anticipate when signing blockbuster deals. Do they prioritize investment? Or do they prioritize momentum? The answer won't come from a press conference. It won't be announced dramatically in June. It will unfold through reps, timing, and performance. But make no mistake, this isn't just a quarterback competition. It's a collision between money and movement. And when those two forces collide in the NFL, something usually gives. Here where the conversation gets quiet. Not loud, not explosive, not headline-grabbing. Quiet. Because sometimes the biggest shift inside an NFL building doesn't come with an announcement. It happens in rep distribution, in meeting room energy, in who stays late, in who veterans gravitate toward after practice. And right now, something subtle feels different in Cleveland. Insider reports haven't declared a starter. Coaches continue to use careful language: competition, evaluation, development. That's standard offseason framing. But when you look at the details, a pattern begins to form. The Browns didn't aggressively chase another veteran quarterback this offseason. They didn't panic in free agency. They didn't spend major draft capital trying to fix the room again. Instead, they focused on offensive weapons, protection, skill players, depth. That decision raised eyebrows. Some fans believe that signals confidence in the current direction. Others argue it's simply roster balance strategy. But in the NFL, roster moves often speak louder than press conferences. Then there's the Pro Bowl moment. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just invited, he belonged. He looked comfortable, confident. He stayed on the field longer than most, talking with players, engaging with coaches, building relationships. No ego, no visible pressure, just presence. That presence matters more than people realize. When players across the league treat you like you're part of the future, it reinforces internal belief. And when a quarterback carries himself like the moment isn't too big, teammates notice. But here's what really stands out. Sanders hasn't campaigned publicly, he hasn't demanded anything. Every interview carries the same tone, one day at a time: earn it, compete, respect the process. That approach disarms criticism. Because coming into the league as a fifth-round pick, there were whispers. Some analysts questioned whether the draft slide reflected league-wide doubt. Others speculated about hype versus readiness. Those conversations still exist in some circles. But momentum doesn't always follow draft position. Momentum follows trust. And trust builds through repetition. Reports suggest Sanders has been earning first-team reps in certain packages. Not handed, earned. Coaches emphasize preparation, teammates reference command in the huddle. None of it dramatic, none of it loud. Just steady. Some fans believe this is simply the natural excitement around a young quarterback. Others think it's the early stages of a long-term pivot. But here, the key difference between hype and shift. Hype is external, it lives on social media. It explodes for a week and fades. A shift is internal, it lives in the locker room. And once that shift takes root, it's hard to reverse. Because if veterans begin adjusting their expectations, if young players start aligning their timelines, if coaches subtly tailor concepts to a specific skill set, that's not temporary. That's directional. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson remains in recovery, still working, still fighting to return. His experience hasn't disappeared, his contract hasn't vanished, and no official decision has been made. But momentum rarely waits for full clarity. It builds while uncertainty lingers. And that's where Cleveland now stands, in a space where no one is saying it outright, yet everyone can feel it. The building doesn't sound divided. It sounds aligned. The only question left is whether that alignment becomes permanent, or if circumstances force another turn. Because once a locker room begins leaning in one direction, it doesn't take much for that lean to become a step forward. At first glance, this looks like a standard quarterback competition. A veteran with a massive contract. A young quarterback with rising momentum. Coaches preaching patience. Fans debating every rep. That's the surface. But underneath, this feels different. Because competitions are loud, they're framed clearly, they're marketed. You hear phrases like open battle and best man wins. Every throw is dissected, every practice becomes a headline. This situation hasn't unfolded that way. Instead, it's been gradual, subtle, almost organic. It started with Quinshon Judkins speaking confidently, not cautiously, about Shedeur Sanders, not political praise, real belief. Then came the mini-camp leadership moment, small detail, big message, accountability without ego. After that, the Buffalo game changed the tone. Sanders didn't deflect blame when Judkins got hurt, he owned it. That kind of emotional accountability builds trust fast in an NFL locker room. Then Myles Garrett shifted the weight of the conversation. A defensive player of the year aligning publicly with the team's direction isn't accidental. It signals internal cohesion. And behind the scenes, Todd Monken's prior belief in Sanders added another layer. This wasn't a random rookie. This was a quarterback Monken once tried to bring into his system before. Familiarity, trust, continuity. Each piece alone might seem small. Together, they tell a story. Now contrast that with the reality surrounding Deshaun Watson. The contract is enormous, fully guaranteed, structurally difficult to escape, financially significant for years. That kind of investment usually dictates opportunity. But football isn't played on spreadsheets. Injuries disrupted Watson's rhythm. Time away from the field created uncertainty. Even if he returns healthy, reclaiming timing and chemistry isn't automatic. The league doesn't pause while someone recovers. Some fans believe the organization must give Watson every chance because of the financial commitment. Others argue that performance, availability, and locker room alignment outweigh salary cap logic. And that's the tension. This isn't simply about who throws the better deep ball in August. It's about which direction the team feels aligned with. Momentum doesn't always announce itself, it accumulates, it builds quietly until one day it's undeniable. Right now, the Browns haven't made a dramatic declaration. There's been no official turning point, no headline nomming a permanent starter. But look at the patterns. They didn't aggressively chase another quarterback this offseason. They invested in weapons, in protection, in pieces that support growth. That's not panic behavior, that's developmental behavior. Sanders hasn't demanded anything publicly. No bold claims, no entitlement, just steady messaging, earn it one day at a time. That tone matters. It disarms critics and builds credibility. Meanwhile, veterans aren't distancing themselves from him. They're leaning in. That's the difference between a battle and a shift. A battle is temporary, two names fighting for one role. A shift is structural, it changes how a team sees itself moving forward. And once a locker room emotionally commits to a direction, revering that current becomes difficult even for front offices navigating large contracts. Because at the end of the day, players follow belief. They follow consistency. They follow accountability. They follow presence. And belief can outweigh money. None of this guarantees anything. Training camp reps still matter. Health still matters. Performance will ultimately decide everything. Some reports still suggest Watson will get every opportunity to reclaim the role once fully cleared. But here's the bigger question. If the locker room already feels aligned, if young offensive pieces see Sanders as their quarterback, if defensive leaders view the direction as sustainable, does the organization resist that current or ride it? That's not just a depth chart decision. That's a franchise identity decision. Because the Browns aren't just choosing a Week 1 starter. They're choosing which timeline to embrace. The veteran contract tied to the past expectation, or the emerging momentum tied to the future. And once that choice becomes clear inside the building, everyone else will finally see what's been quietly forming all along.